So, hello and welcome to the Lewis Nichols Show. In something that I've just got to say is overdue. I'm surprised it's taken this long to actually get him on the show. So let's say hello to Viktor spacelord. How are you?
I'm good, man. How you doing today?
Really good. It's kind of this is the first time I've ever had anyone on my show that I've previously spoke to, because you were actually on mine and Just Dave's podcast last week with the kind of Ascension reunion. You also had Fred Rosser on there as well. So that was kind of a good podcast to have you guys on.
Yeah, me and Con have been wanting to do a bunch of them and stuff like that. It's just seemed like with everything going on, everything kind of like just completely slowed down with us for a while, you know. And it's just been wacky. It's one of those wacky rides. So more than happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
I was saying to you off air then, I was looking at some pictures when I was doing some research earlier of you kind of 5 years ago, and you actually look so much younger now than you did then. I was kind of looking at it thinking, this isn't the same guy that I spoke to on the podcast last week, because it just doesn't look like you. And you said you've actually noticed that yourself now.
I've thought that for a long time. I've always noticed it, like even going back to Stampede pictures, where like I can see the like difference like in youth and stuff, but like in general I always go, man, I feel like I look older back then. So but too, now, like, finally getting rid of my terrible hairline helps a lot as well. Like, having the freedom to do that was quite nice.
So today I wanted to go to the kind of the very beginning. You've probably seen some of my interviews where we kind of go back, which is where you're actually, your love for wrestling actually come from. So, you know, I always like to know, was it something you loved growing up? Were you a fan of it?
Oh, definitely. Like, it's kind of funny because I was like really, really young. I think the first time I saw wrestling, like I had just moved to like a very small town in northern Alberta. It's like 5 hours north of Edmonton. And my next door neighbors, like I was like probably 5 or 6 years old, and the next door neighbors had like three kids, I think, or they had two boys and like two girls. And the two boys were wrestling fans, and they would always be getting like the WWF pay-per-views. Like you'd go rent them at the video store back in the day, and they were always showing me wrestling. And then we were always out wrestling in the yard. It just kind of took off from there. Like I think even I wasn't too much older than that when a friend of mine that a friend of my dad's that he worked with took me to my first Stampede wrestling show, and it was just because at the time he didn't have kids and he was such a fan. Like he was there buying pictures and stuff, and being like, hey, get him to sign these pictures for you. And like, really, he'd just call over the wrestlers. So, you know, it was started real young.
And where did it kind of go from you liking it, being a fan, to actually training and becoming a wrestler? How did that kind of transition all come about?
I think it just kind of came by fate, I suppose. It's kind of weird how it happens because like, I lost a little bit of my love for wrestling for a while, because at first when I was a teenager, it wasn't cool for a little bit. And I just kind of like got into other things for a while. And then I was still friends with like my same childhood buddies, basically, that got me into wrestling, or that, you know, we used to always do all the wrestling stuff together with. And all of a sudden we just started like falling in love with it again, watching old stuff one summer. And then that was kind of like right before the Attitude Era took off again.
Yeah.
So there was like that, and I had another buddy who he was showing me like bootleg tapes of like ECW and stuff like that at the time, and like seeing that like really brought it back when I'd kind of just like not thought about it for a while, and also it was like, holy cow, like there's a whole new world of wrestling again here in kind of the same world of wrestling. So it was awesome, and it just kind of took off from there. Because then both of those guys, like we were always just doing stuff like, even, you know, they say don't do it at home, but like we were backyard wrestling, but not to the degree you see a lot of people doing it. We never did. I don't think we did light tubes and crazy stuff like that. And if we did something, we knew it was silly and kind of like, hey, let's not have somebody go to the emergency room tonight. And that just kind of kept going with me trying to be a teenager and figure out what I wanted to do. I was a young kid who was in a small rural town, and I just wanted to do something else, I guess. Like a lot of my friends were in bands and wanted to do that. And just something about wrestling always kind of kept calling to me. And And then one day I had two different friends like see a commercial for the dungeon on the local TV network. And they were like, hey man, here's the number, like if you want to call and stuff like that. And so it took me a while even, because then I remember the first day I was about to call was the day Owen passed away. So, because I was, so I was like, it was not too long before that. Like, I think I'd only had the number for a few days, and I was working like night shifts at the bus station there. And I was like, all right, tonight I'm going to call, because I could call free from the bus station since it was long distance. And all of a sudden my buddies are like, hey, this just happened. Like, I was like, what? Like, I got a call from one of my buddies. He's like, man, I can't believe this just happened. So I remember, like, I just waited a while even after that before I bothered to call and get any info. And then by the time I did, it's funny because a few of us all, from at that same time, like myself, Ruffy Silverstein, and another guy, the Highlander Rob Roy, not the same as like the Canadian Highlanders. He was actually from Scotland. All three of us had the same story of calling Bruce Hart. You'd talk to him and, you know, kind of like get the little gist of something. And then I can't remember if he'd call us back and be Ross Hart, or if when we would call back, then he would say it was Ross Hart and pretend he was like his brother instead of him. And just like, we were always like, man, they sound exactly the same. It's so weird. Like, that was always a thing on the phone. And then like when you meet Bruce, you're like, wait, like, okay, does everybody sound the same? And then you'd meet Ross and be like, he'd have no idea really kind of who you were. Be like, oh yeah, I've heard, you know, and they don't sound anything alike really. I was like, what was the point of all that, you know? But Bruce was just a notorious jokester. So in a way, it was a really good place to break in. Got to see a lot of different sides of the business that kept me prepared for a very long time.
It's tough, as people say, because you always hear in different interviews and documentaries that it's a kind of a really intense place to learn, and you're put through your paces. So did you ever experience that? Is it as kind of tough as it's made out to be in documentaries?
Oh, definitely. I saw my first year there, I couldn't believe how many people I saw come and go, you know, and that would pay their money and then just, they'd be there a month and then be like, no way, fuck this, I'm out of here. Like, Bruce had a really good way of weeding people out. Like, the wrestling business is tough. And, you know, I had so many good guys around me that I started with back then and stuff, and not too many kind of kept wrestling because it's super hard. And I think at that time too, coming from up there still wasn't like internet and stuff like there is nowadays, like social media, like all that kind of thing. There wasn't really any of that. So it just kind of left us in like a weird little, you know, frozen corner of Canada trying to wrestle. And Canada's so huge, like it's hard to even drive to other places, you know what I mean, to get bookings and stuff like that, because it's just, you go so far and there was no money. And it, you know, you really like had to stick through it. Like, there's only a few guys like Johnny Devine who really was able to get out for a while and kind of, you know, do TNA and that kind of stuff and kind of keep himself going in wrestling for a long time. But it, you know, at that time it was so hard. You know, some of the guys are still wrestling. Like, there's Duke Durango and Chris Steele, and there's still a few younger guys too, you know, back there that are still wrestling, but like they've, you know, or even we all call him Chucky, but he's Michael Blaise, who he's one of the kids that's really like kind of gone after it, and I hope to see him get a shot, because he's got a lot of talent, and he started when he was like 15 or 16 years old, and he literally looked like a Chucky doll. And now he looks nothing like that. So,
Well, were there ever times for you at the dungeon where you kind of thought, I can't do this, this is too much? Because they like to break you, because I think that was kind of a test to who you are. If you had that strength and that determination, could you be broken, or did you just keep going along with it? So was there ever a time for you where you nearly kind of walked out of it?
Every day when I started, actually. It was so, like, it felt like really tough. I've heard so many other stories, and I think that was kind of one of the main things that kept kept me fueled and kind of going through it all, because like I used to have to take like a bus for an hour to get there all the time. And in the winter in Calgary, like your bus ride was an hour, not the amount of time you were standing outside in the, freezing snow waiting to get there. Cause their house was way up on a hill, way up on the different other side of town hill from, where I was in Calgary. And, I hate winter so bad. And I swear it's just cause of like days like that. I just remember like that being so miserable, and I would hurt so bad. Like the dungeon, the mats there were usually coming apart, and we'd be running drills, and like right in the middle where you're trying to take your falls and stuff like that, they're coming apart. So like your back and ribs are hitting different parts and just getting winded all the time. But I would have so much fun when I'd have good days that like even when I was on the bus on the way back, I'd be like, yeah, I can't quit. And two, I'd never had as much money in my life as I had at that time as that I gave to Bruce Hart to learn to wrestle. And I just wasn't, I wasn't going to quit. And that's kind of stuck with me all my way through wrestling. So.
Did you ever meet Bret Hart? Did he ever kind of come to the dungeon to meet you guys?
Yeah, well, not specifically to meet us, because that was at the time when Bret had the concussion from Goldberg. And
okay.
So he was just kind of getting better. And there was kind of just always stuff going on between like him and Bruce. They're a big family, and there's been a lot of crazy stuff that's gone on through the years and stuff. So it was just, I remember one day there was like me and my friend Chris, who he helped me out so much, like when I first started, because like he had a car, so he'd come get me, kind of lived in the same area. So we'd show up early and kind of like stay late and stuff like that. And one day as we had stayed late, Bret came in, and said like, hey, and whatnot. He's like, hey, my brother Bruce around? Like, yeah, I think he's upstairs with your dad or whatever. We're like, okay, cool. Very nice to meet you. And he just, he goes upstairs, and then 2 minutes later we hear hollering and stuff like that. And we're like, oh geez. Like, so it was a crazy time, like around there. There was just always kind of a lot of stuff going on. And I think that's why a lot of the kids turned out, so good to be the way they are, because they've seen all the crazy and learned from it. And, I think everybody now, like everybody's moms, I remember always being so awesome. So, and like, all the Hart guys too that I knew, like, I am very thankful for Bruce. He's definitely the biggest shit disturber I've ever met, I think, in wrestling. But I'm very thankful for him. And he was always like pretty good to me. I could never complain. And like Ross was probably one of the best kind of like teachers, at the same time. Like he was the opposite of a jokester, I guess I would say. So.
And did you, I was to say, did you actually wrestle for Stampede as well?
Yeah, I wrestled for them for, oh man, well, I started in 2000. Like I only trained for about 6 months in the dungeon because they were actually running a lot of like live events or whatever you want to call them, like town shows. And they would run all through like Alberta and Saskatchewan at the time. So like we would actually go out and wrestle for like a week sometimes. And I was like, man, I want to go do that. So I was lucky enough that I kind of had a job that knew what I did. I was a security guard at the time, and they thought it was cool. So they were like, yeah, go out and, they'd give me the time off here and there to go do the shows. And like Stampede always kind of ran pretty frequently on weekends, and they would do bi-weekly or like weekly shows like in Calgary. And I think when I first got there, after that first little like week tour I did, I'd managed to get on their last TV show that they had at the time. So it was me and Quick Kick Kirk Melnick who had a match. So like within, 6 months, I was actually on local TV at the time.
So going from kind of wrestling at Stampede and before WWE, what were you doing? Because it was obviously 10 years there before you even, came onto WWE kind of television. So what were you doing during those 10 years? Did you ever, because I looked online, did you wrestle in Japan for a bit as well?
I did, yeah. So through Stampede Wrestling and wrestling there, so like it was about because like I did Stampede until 2007. Technically, was when I moved out of Calgary, but I was there that whole time for the most part. And so I did Stampede, and there was a few other local companies around that I would go work with. But then through Stampede and like TJ and Harry, um, there was an old Japanese trainer that would train guys in Calgary named Tokyo Joe. And he used to wrestle way back in the day, like everywhere. He like all around the world. And he had lost his leg on the last show he was about to do for Stampede Wrestling before going back home back in, I think it was the 60s or 70s. Because it had been 30 years at the time, and this was like, early 2000, 2003 when I met him. And he kind of took a bunch of us in, like me, Harry, TJ, and another guy, Dave Swift. And then like eventually like Natty would train with him as well. And, a few of the other guys would always kind of be, get brought in every now and then. But mainly he was training us to like send us all to Japan and just try to help us. And so he started sending guys to Brian Dixon out there in the UK. And so in about, I think it was 2004, I was supposed to go out for Dixon. And that was the first time I'd ever traveled internationally. And I was a young kid, and I got stopped and sent home because I didn't have the right paperwork. And so that sucked. Yeah, because, Brian Dixon at the time, for a lot of us Canadian guys out there, that was the place to go, because you could go out there for 4 or 5 months, however long, and wrestle and make money and, just live a wrestler life and, be out there in the UK. And so I got stopped and sent home because they started to catch on. There's too many of us going over without work permits. So that, changed right away afterwards. But right after that, I went out and I was able to do one tour of New Japan at the end of 2004. And so it was like Ryan Danielson, Scott Norton, and Josh Barnett were the other 3 gaijin on that tour with me. And I was out there for a month, and that was awesome. Like, I was thinking about that earlier today. I was like, I remember getting off that bus, or getting onto the bus after such a long flight from Calgary to Japan. And I'm on that bus with Brian and Scott Norton. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like, and I'm on a bus. Like, this isn't, this isn't Stampede Wrestling anymore. And then somebody's interviewing me, and I was like, whoa, like, nobody's ever cared before about like interviewing me. Like, and Tokyo Joe, like, he had such good connections. He was always sending pictures and stuff like that to New Japan of like us training, because like he had his own little dojo there kind of for us at BJ's gym, which was like Ted Hart's, dad's gym. And so, yeah, I was out there for a month, and I mean, it was just the best. Like, I've always wanted to go back. I've always been sad that I've never been able to go back there, because there was just, to me, there was nothing cooler. I don't know.
Well,
it was the best.
I've had a lot of kind of people on the show say the same thing. We had Rowan last week, and he said that the crowd are completely different because they don't cheer throughout the whole match. You'll get a little bit where they'll clap, and then it's dead silence. Yeah. So is that kind of weird to get used to? Because I guess for you, you're used to crowds being noisy. They react to the good stuff, the bad stuff. So kind of have silence. Was that a bit surreal to get used to?
No. Luckily for me, I was such a big fan of New Japan at the time and like all Japanese wrestling. I was really kind of like expecting more of it, and we would always laugh because I'd get weird reactions for stuff that would pop the crowd, and it would almost like throw me off, like when they'd pop for stuff, and and it was such an exciting feeling because you're like, whoa, what the? And then like, oh no, I still got to be going right now. And like Norton would always laugh, and he's like, there's certain little things you do, like he's like, even like a leapfrog. It's like they like how high you get or something, and they react. I'm like, it's so weird. Like, but yeah, it's just, there's something about it, because like I kind of get it. Like, I'm the same way sometimes when I watch things. I know I've been in a crowd for like live wrestling, and there's certain things that like I won't react to, even though I think they're cool, and then other things that I do react to with the crowd. So I always enjoyed it. Like Japan, I just thought it was fun, a lot of fun.
Now, moving kind of forward quite a few years now to WWE, I wanted to kind of go back to how that all came about for you. Was it something did you send a video off of your work? Did they approach you? How did it all come about?
So honestly, like, so after that little stint in Japan, I hurt my knee at Stampede and was just like getting depressed. So that was when, once I healed, I actually went out to Dixon in the UK. I went out there for about 4 months and just wrestling and wrestling there. And I really didn't want to do much else. I just wanted to do kind of England and still go back to Japan. Like, I just enjoyed that lifestyle so much. I would have been content with that. But then my ex had done something down in OVW and got kind of accepted to go to like Rip's class at the time, Rip Rogers' class. And so through that, like, I went with her there after a while, and I was so hesitant because I wasn't really big on WWE style, I guess, at the time. Like, I just wasn't, I guess I was still kind of a wrestler. Like, I was just thinking wrestling, like I wasn't where everything had evolved to. And OVW wound up changing that because they kind of showed me how it could be both. And Rip Rogers was so good at that. Like, he put a lot of those pieces together for me because he was such an actually very good, simple, technical wrestler. But he made things real and made them make sense, even if they were sometimes hokey or funny. He kind of taught us all how to do it. You know, he could show you how to do it. And that was kind of what did it. And then when the contract, or like when WWE actually pulled out and moved everything to Florida, at that point we were like, what are we going to do? And Joey Mercury, Roadkill, Rob Conway, and Nick Dinsmore all kind of came in to kind of like help and be like, hey guys, we know there's like no money here, but we've still got OVW, and OVW's been here a while, and we want to keep it going. Y'all want to keep it going too? And we were like, yes. And just kind of through that is basically what did it, because like that just drove me, because we weren't making any money. Everyone there was struggling, but that's all everybody was actually trying to do was get to WWE, because OVW was a perfect little copy of WWE, more or less, the way like Danny ran everything. And you know, that's how we learned everything, like how they work the camera angles, all that kind of stuff, you know, timing for things. And through that, all I could think of doing was getting to WWE, and I wasn't getting there. We had John Laurinaitis come down one time, and he couldn't have given a shit about me. You know, and like, no offense, like to him at the time, like there was probably like 60, 70 people there. I remember that day. And like, for instance, Abraham Washington, he was one of the 3 people I think that got hired that day. Or like Kalen Croft got hired that day. And like there was a couple other guys, and I can't remember exactly their names, but so like seeing that really like crushed me. And I was like, man, I didn't feel like this was a fair kind of shake for me, you know? And so I will admit, I called in a favor, and I called Natty and I said, hey, Natty, what do I got to do? Like, do I got to send somebody a tape in the office there or whatever? Because I don't feel like, you know, I'm done and I don't know how else to get there. And so through that, her and, you know, Harry and TJ basically went to bat for me. And I know I sent some stuff in and to Dr. Tom and stuff, and him and Norman, I know like Norman Smiley all watched it and were like, yeah, this guy's good, let's bring him in. And, you know, they pushed for me to get the tryout, and I came down for a week and I had a pretty good tryout, I thought, and then went back to Louisville for a month, and I had no money whatsoever. I was literally just sitting there being like, when are they going to at least pay me for the tryout? Like they said they would. Like, I felt like I'd been waiting for so long that I was just like, man, I'm about to die. Like, I've got no money left here. You know, I'm living with my buddy Ollie Baez, who put a house over my head at the time. And finally, Ty Bailey called me back and said, "No, we're not going to hire you." And I was just like, "Shit." And he's like, it's not a no forever, but it's a no right now. And he gave me some reasons. I kind of like remember arguing with him about at the time, but I couldn't win. So that was that. I went back to Calgary for about a year, and they came to do some shows. I called up to do a tryout, or not a tryout, but to be an extra. And they had me back then. And literally, it was one of those times where it was just like, man, I know everybody here now. Like my time from being in OVW and FCW is like, it's such a different feeling to be backstage when it's like that as opposed to before. And I went in to thank Johnny Ace and Ty Bailey for just having me there the couple days, because we didn't even really get to do anything. It was just like one of those crazy days, both 2 days at TV, where nobody could get in the ring or have extra matches. And I got sat down and said, "Hey, here's your opportunity. Why should we hire you?" And that was an interesting conversation, to say the least. And I really didn't think I was going to get hired. Like, even at the end of that, I was like, I think I might be done wrestling even at this point in time. And at the end of the conversation, John Laurinaitis stood up and goes, "Welcome to WWE, kid. You just got a job." He like shakes my hand and walks out. I'm like, what in the fuck just happened? Like, just so surreal, Yeah, it was so odd. And then, not only a few months later, I was down in Florida, so at FCW.
And I mean, with that, just hearing you there, it kind of came across like you didn't really have confidence that they had confidence in you to start with, or you even had confidence in yourself. So do you think kind of getting that chance and that shot, and said, "Look, welcome to WWE," did that give you the confidence then to realize that actually there is something about me that they liked, and the fact that I gave it another go and showed them something, did that kind of give you confidence that you could do it?
No. My confidence just kind of came out of nowhere, actually, at the moment. Because I kind of got angry. And unfortunately for me, like, unless I get kind of angry about stuff, I'm not very outspoken. But it's because I'm like very reserved. I know, like, I say a lot of wrong things, I guess. Like, I've put my foot in my mouth too many times, but like, even when I look back at stuff in NXT and stuff like that, like, and all through developmental, like, it really took me being angry and like fighting. Like, you always kind of have to fight, especially like not always kind of have to fight in WWE. You always have to fight. And so I think that's kind of what it was. Because in a way, like I said, in that time, like, I was there, I didn't think they were going to hire me. And the conversation that I had just kind of pissed me off, I guess, at the time. And so like my final answer on something to Johnny Ace, I think, might have been what did it. I don't know. But like other people have said, I think sometimes like he was just testing you. Like back then he was a much different guy. Like the Johnny Ace I met before he hired me was a way different Johnny Ace than I worked with the rest of my career in WWE. So it was just, I have it there. I think if anything, I'm also confident that I can screw up at any time too. So, being not a complete idiot, like, and being able to understand that, like, that's kind of what messes me up. Cause like, there's so many times like, fuck yeah, I can nail this out of the ballpark. And I'll always like fuck up one little thing. And, even if it's no big deal to somebody else, like I'll tear myself apart about stuff like that. Like I've said that, like, I'm very guilty of like taking myself too seriously a lot of the times. And really, like, I'm not that serious. Like, I think I was trained by people who like took things very seriously, but like also know how to let go. But I was always in such a serious mode of kind of just trying to move forward all the time, I guess, instead of dance around and then move forward a bit.
And with wrestling, obviously, you've got the athlete side and the fighting side of it, but you've also got that performer needing to be able to cut promos and having the confidence to go out there and kind of go out of your comfort zone. Was that something that you struggled with, that side of things, bringing out the inner performer?
Yes. In that way, like when it came to kind of talking and just being on camera, a lot of the times, I guess I didn't know what to talk about at first, like especially when I started in OVW and Stampede and stuff like that. And then FCW really helped me a lot with that, like working with guys like Dusty Rhodes. And actually, like Dr. Tom helped me so much. Like I don't think I've ever had another coach sit there and teach me something in the way he did. Like, and Dr. Tom was very good at sitting down one-on-one with you and having a conversation with you. And then, how do I put it? He's kind of like a psychotherapist or something, because he kind of like, it's like, he shows you what he's trying to teach you just by sitting there and having the conversation with you. And it, like, that was so valuable to me to have him invest that time. And I don't know how many people got that about him. But a lot of us, once we realized that, that's what he was doing, it was just amazing, because like I've never had somebody else be able to do that. But Norman Smiley also helped me, because at the time I had such a love for Big Papa Pump, and I still do. But Norman would be like, we're always kind of being silly, like when we're wrestling around and just doing stuff. Because why don't you just go watch these promos and just do stuff like that? And I wound up sitting, like, I remember being in my apartment and watching hours and hours of just Scott Steiner promos on YouTube. And I loved it, like every minute of it so much. And it really helped me just break out of my shell. And so I've kind of, after that, like, I just found the more ridiculous that I could be or make myself feel in a lot of those situations, just made it more comfortable. Like, Byron Saxton was one who, like, when he was working a lot with us on Ascensions stuff, he was like, the more uncomfortable you are in these situations, the better. And Byron Saxton makes me uncomfortable with how comfortable he is at overdoing everything he does. And I think he's great for it. Like, he was one of those talents, doesn't get enough credit for what he did for a lot of people. So.
And I mean, we've got to move on to, of course, the Ascension. So when that idea was kind of pitched to you, this is what a tag team are going to look like, be like, what were your initial thoughts and reaction to the Ascension?
Well, that's a funny one, because just to be fair, like, I loved the Ascension since the very first day I saw it. The very first promo that they ever did with, like, in promo class that I saw was like with Ricardo and Connor and Brom and Shaw and I was Orlando Colon. That was who the original Ascension was the very first day. And so I got to see everything that kind of happened with them, like, way before that, to even get to that point. Like, even I'd always wanted to be a part of it, because, like, Norman kind of always said, like, you'd really fit in this, and, like, we'd kind of try to pitch the Dream, but he wouldn't kind of bite on it. Like, Dream would always be like, it's something else. I see you doing something else, baby. That's ain't it. I was just like, damn it, like, it's so cool. Like, to me, it was just so cool. And then Connor even broke his back at one point in time, and it was like, holy cow, like, there was just a lot that happened with that team, but they were still, like, wanting to do something with it. They knew there was something there. And after Braun was gone, I remember Connor was up doing some house show loops at the time with whatchamacallit. Oh, him and Graves were just up there. They weren't teaming, but they were the ones off doing loops that weekend. And they came back as we were starting to film stuff at Full Sail for, like, the NXT, the initial entrance, like filming the pilot and stuff like that. And I think it was Chris Chambers, who was super cool. I, like, really love it. He's somebody that's been with WWE forever. He's super creative, super great guy. He was filming or directing kind of a lot of the stuff. He calls me over after we kind of filmed Ascensions, and he goes, "Hey, Hunter wants to like film some like an Ascension entrance with you." I was like, "What?" Like that was literally it. Like I was, you know, I'd been wrestling on my own for like the longest time at that point, and I did not think Ascension was anywhere in the works for me at all. Like I thought, you know, Ryan was about to go up and stay up. And he's like, "Yeah, Connor's just getting here from the airport, so like we just want to film some stuff with you guys. Like Hunter wants to see how it looks. Because just go talk to Ryan for a minute." And Ryan was like so tired. He's just like, he's like, yeah, we're gonna film some stuff. Like I know the feeling now because he had just had, you know, a super long weekend, just got out of the airport, and so he's like, "Yeah, we're gonna go film this." And so all we really did, there's like a little GIF of it. I always see it's one of the first ones, but Connor has his big furry jacket on, and I just have like a cutoff shirt on. But it's just us standing there like this, basically, and the camera just kind of going around us. And I was like, that's from the very first thing we ever filmed. So that was kind of how it came to be initially. And then I think of the next, it was one of the like next shows we were at. Hunter was standing there, even after seeing this, he was like, "Man, I really want somebody else like with him." And I guess this was while like Connor was working, and it was Norman and Billy Kidman goes, "Norman was literally just saying like 5 minutes ago, should put Viktor with him." And Hunter went, yeah, you guys are right. And so, you know, it kind of went from there. But you know, at least for how we came together, how everything else came together was, I don't know, a bizarre roller coaster story for everything, absolutely everything involved. So,
and you know, you guys took NXT by storm. It was so exciting. It was something different as well, and the crowd absolutely loved you. You went on to have the tag team championship, and you were involved in some kind of big moments. So for you to be part of this team, did you feel kind of a sense of WWE had faith in you as a performer, that they're giving you such a big opportunity to run with this?
I don't know if I ever thought of it that way. And not in a bad way. I mean, like, I guess there was a lot of pressure on us. Like when we won the tag titles, that was a very bizarre day. Like mine and Ryan's developmental career was interesting. Like a lot of guys were at that time. It's not the same world. And definitely, yeah, we knew it was an opportunity, but it was about proving ourselves. Like there was a lot of doubt in us. And that was kind of, I felt like at the time, more instated for quite a while. And I think that might have been what got us to where we were. Like when we first won those tag titles, like we didn't believe we were going to have them in a month. We weren't sure if we were going to actually be employed in a month or two, in all honesty. It was it was just like I said, you always got to fight in WWE, and it was like a really big fight. And we never really stopped fighting, so it probably didn't feel the same to people looking at us from the outside as to how we felt. But in a way, that's probably why we were the way we were in the ring. You couldn't get two guys more pissed off than what we were usually in our heads. Like I was, yeah, like I need to be in a wrestling ring being how I am because I need that outlet. You know, just because of stuff like that. I think like developmental for everybody that was there at that time, I think felt the same. And I think we felt like all the people that we were there with going through the same stuff. Like I thought we were yelling for them too, because like you just saw it every day. And it wasn't an easy place, you know. I definitely had there was definitely a point in time where they finally chilled out and were like, no, this is really good. And we were like, oh, what the fuck? Like, everything's okay now? But like that didn't happen like right away. And it was tough. Like we were training a lot, we were working a lot. Like at NXT at that time, like especially once we got to Orlando, man, like 6 days a week for sure. Sometimes 7, because you still have Sunday shows sometimes, and you would still go into train Monday morning, Tuesday, every day. And that was a lot. Like I wasn't. Neither me and Ryan were super young dudes at that time. Like, so there was lots of young kids that are coming in, and we're still going full bore. Like how we can walk, especially with him. He broke his back at one point in time. Like he was the reason that they finally put wrestling mats around the ring at FCW back then. It was a lot. Like it was just like, oh, like you went home and just died every day. And like for a while he was traveling back and forth between Tampa and Orlando every day, or then he'd just stay in hotels. Like there was him and Adam Rose were doing stuff like that. And it was quite the like mental battle. Like developmental was like a very big mental and like physical battle at the same time. So it was hard to feel like you knew it was an opportunity, but you were just kind of trying to prove yourself, it felt like the whole time for a lot of us. So.
And for you, going back to that, what was your biggest struggles? What did you personally feel you were fighting against kind of the most?
At that time, it just felt like time, more or less, because like the biggest struggle was proving ourselves for a long time, because sometimes it was really hard, I thought, to prove ourselves because we weren't always given the opportunity, I would say, to have like a 5-star match, because a lot of the times we had squash matches and we had young and experienced guys who, like, I didn't want to do something too because I didn't know that they could even take it sometimes, you know what I mean? And so like those were some of the biggest struggles, was just trying to overcome that. Like how do you just be awesome in this situation all the time without just doing the exact same thing week in and week out. And so that was, to me, probably one of the biggest struggles. Like I always felt back then was like, how do we keep getting better just doing this all the time? And so I used to fight with Bill about that all the time. Like, let us do more, like, give us more. And times where he would let us work guys like Jason Jordan and Juice Robinson, and we could go 20 minutes or half an hour and just have awesome matches. It just made it so much more satisfying. Just being like, yeah, like, we were all guys trying to prove that was what we could do and do good. And being able to get those opportunities, but like always having to fight for them and stuff. It just, overcoming those things was like, that was like the biggest battle, I guess, for the last while. Cause like we wanted to do more, and like, granted, they did what they were doing and it still worked. Everything that they did at that time worked, even whether we saw that, or not. It was just, we were still just hungry guys trying to do more. So.
And I think
I feel like
kind of point of view is, we don't like things when it's forced down your throat, when they want someone to be a star and it's forced on you. And I think that the good thing with the Ascension, which is why everyone got behind you, was everything about it was organic. We were watching both of you grow in confidence. Everything, you were just getting better in front of us. And I think that's why, as an audience, we just fell in love with the guys, because you were good. You were really good, and you were getting better. And so did you kind of feel that reaction from the crowd? Because in NXT, you were hugely popular.
Yeah, we can still remember the first time we came out to cheers, because we were hated for so long. And then it was a match with Camacho and Hunico at the time. And it was like this was one of my favorite matches there too. It was like a Falls Count Anywhere match. And just everything we did in that match was awesome, it felt like. And Connor was over kicking maybe Hunico in the corner, and he started doing the yaws. And the crowd started doing it too. And I remember he said, like, because I was, off on the side doing something else. And he said he looked up the crowd and went, really? That's what it is? And the whole place went nuts. And after that, like, it just kept going. Like, and it just gave us more energy. Like, I loved being able to go out there and feel that place blow up. Like, NXT was like ECW kind of for us, with the way that crowd became. And like, I can remember saying that to Paul Heyman one day when he was first there, just being like, I used to watch your shows and love them and love that energy. And now this is kind of feels the same, just with cleaner mouthed fans. So, but it was awesome. And getting to be a part of that and the start of that, like, it was awesome. Like, it was really great. I always loved going out on those shows.
So, I spoke to Connor about this, and obviously having that kind of buzz, that hype surrounding you, and you find out you're going to the main roster, that must have been such a big moment, because I guess that's what you build up to. NXT is to build up to move over to the main roster. So when they kind of came to you and said, look, you're moving over, what were your thoughts on that? Were you excited about it?
That very day, at that moment, I thought they might fire me at the same time. Right? Like, even it was just, and nobody had even said anything like that at the time by any means. It was just, I kind of always had that, I guess, fear in my head, like, that it was just going to be like, hey, even after all this time, guess what? We tried. Too bad, kids. See you later. And it was just so odd that day, because like I think we'd finally kind of done some live events together up there. We'd finally done like a couple weekends of live events, kind of right before the pay-per-view where we lost the titles to Kalisto and Sin Cara. And that was the first time I'd even gone up on the road. And at that point in time, it was almost 5 years that I'd been in developmental and gotten a shot. And I think I just still like had so much doubt that it would ever happen, because for the longest time it just seemed like we were just waiting. Like, a lot of the times we were told, like, hey, you guys, at the end, it was like, you guys are good, just stay healthy, like, just keep waiting. But there kind of wasn't like any communication of what was happening for a long time. And we'd had a couple like hiccups of things like that we'd been asked for, and then, I don't know, weren't actually what was asked for or what was needed or something like that. And it just was like so frustrating, like, in a way. So just like waiting and waiting. And I can remember Dean Malenko being like, waited this long, just wait a little bit longer, like, it'll work out. And so like that day, just by the time it was like, yeah, you guys are going to come up, like, here's how you're going to look. And, finally talk the old man into it. He saw the last pay-per-view, thought you guys were awesome. He gets it. So, we'll bring you up. It'll be soon. And like, we were sitting there in a room with like Dream and Bill and David Bailey and I believe even Sarah was in the room that day too. Can't remember, and probably Norman. And I just remember like I felt like I watched my whole wrestling career kind of like flash like in front of me.
Wow.
Like in that one moment. And it's funny because everybody else is like cheering and popping, and I'm just like, and Hunter on the screen just goes like, man, everybody looks really happy except Victor. Victor, are you okay? Like, the fuck, man? I was like, dude, yeah, I'm good. Sorry. So.
Wow. Because, I Connor was very open about this. It didn't really go the way that I think a lot of people thought it would with, the main run, because you just had this hype. The crowd loved you, and everyone was so excited that you were going over to the main roster, and for some reason it just didn't work, and it didn't feel the same. So what was it like for you? Because, I mean, you clearly there kind of said you were frustrated about it, so it's almost like you knew that was going to happen.
I mean, there was a lot of like weird instances that I think of, because like, as you said, the fans in NXT once they were with us, somehow they didn't notice, like, which I couldn't understand. There was a couple times, or I can't even remember how long it had been going on at the time, but we got sent out to do a promo, and we come in the back, and Michael Hayes goes, "They had you cut a heel promo, and they're cheering for you like baby faces. What the fuck's going on?" We're like, oh, you know, and it was just such an odd thing. And even, I feel like it was at the pay-per-view after that, where I think when we were taking on like Kenta and Finn, and Pat Patterson, who I thought always kind of been watching, was like, "Oh, they think you guys are baby faces. Like, it's so great." And we were just like, what? Like, okay, all right. Like, it was just very bizarre. So we didn't know how, like, because like they're all sitting there watching these shows, and it just like didn't occur to me like how they were missing it at times. Like, I guess because like we'd never changed anything about us, or like, you know, how we were doing things. So I think they just always saw us like as being villains, and like that's why even like when Kenta and you know, Finn came in, they were still trying to like make us more the heels, but like the fans were just excited to get those matches at the times. Like, you know, nobody was getting booed. So,
and it comes across sometimes because you see a lot of stars, very popular in NXT. They come over and it just doesn't work for them, and it's almost like NXT, and there's no kind of crossover with both Raw, SmackDown, or NXT. It's like you go from there. There's nothing in between. It's almost like they both kind of know what you were doing previously.
It's odd because like we worked with so many of the different kind of writers back and forth, and with the producers, you know, and with Hunter and a lot of people like that. And so it never quite made sense to me, other than like, I guess the best way I could say it is like, in our case, Vince just had his own vision, you know, of what he wanted. And so I know some of the things, like even when we first were filming stuff, like even that got changed a couple times, because like Hunter was, from what I know, being like, no, this isn't kind of how it should be. And it just became kind of like a struggle, you know. It was like, but it was like that with, I feel like a lot of the guys at the time who came up. Like you'd come up after all this stuff in NXT, and then all of a sudden it was like, hey, we're gonna do something else with you. And it's like, well, like I get everybody evolves, you know, in their careers on WWE, but a lot of the times they treat it like, hey, this is your first time in front of anybody. And like I remember it was right after first NXT TakeOver pay-per-view, they had us, well, that was one of our, no, it couldn't have been, maybe it was one of those ones anyway. And we did our first, so yeah, this couldn't have been the first TakeOver. Might have been the second one. Sometime around then, nonetheless. And they brought us up to do our first live event. And it was at Madison Square Gardens. I was like, I can remember Bill sitting me down in the office and being like, hey, yeah, you're going on the loop this weekend. I'm like, yeah, sure I am. Sure, Bill. He's like, yeah, no, you are. And you know where it's to? And I'm like, yeah, nowhere, my couch. Like, wherever we're going, like in Largo this weekend or whatever, I don't know. He's like, no, motherfucker, you're going to Madison Square Garden. And I was like, uh-huh, sure, Bill. I was like, nice one. Like, you got me almost for a second there. Like, I just didn't believe him with nothing. I go, when I get an email on my phone that has travel saying I'm going to Madison Square Garden, then I'll believe you. And I went home that day and I was like, what a jerk. Like, I can't believe you tried to mess with me like that. And then, like, I was sitting there on my patio. I remember just being like, oh, you know, this jerk. I got the email and I was like, holy shit, like, I'm really going to Madison Square Garden. So me and Connor get there and we're walking up to Madison Square Garden, and every fan out there knows who we are. And we're like, holy shit, this is crazy. You know, this isn't Winter Park, Florida, or, you know, those kind of places where we know all the fans there. And it was just like, this is nuts. And then even that night they go, you know, we're going to have Vicky introduce you guys to make sure, you know, we can get you guys some heat to fans and stuff. And we're like, awesome. Like, yeah, we love Vicky. Like, it's great. Like, what could be better, you know, better, like, here we are, Madison Square Garden, and Vicky Guerrero's going to introduce us. And, you know, she did. It was funny because the crowd was booing the shit out of Vicky, you know, doing her deal. And then she introduced us, and it was the complete opposite reaction. And, like, I remember we just looked at each other like, holy shit, like, that's the sound in Madison Square Garden? Like, this place usually hates everybody, right? Like, whoa. So it was just stuff like that just seemed crazy. Like, I don't know if the two worlds had quite blended yet. You know what I mean? I feel like they've tried to do a lot better since the early times when guys were coming up in those situations. So, you know, it's all different generations of everything. Kind of seen it through every one of the developmental systems, I think, in a way. So
wow, what a moment that you'll never forget. That's that's incredible. But I mean, I didn't want to go too much into it, but going back to when WWE announced that you and Connor going to be released, what were your initial reactions to that? What were your feelings on it? Did part of you kind of feel a little bit relieved? Were you gutted?
oh, huge relief, really. Like, it was situation we were in just kind of like wasn't fun. I know mentally at the time, like, long, like, before that, I actually had to admit, I was just like, I'm burnt out right now. Like, I'm not happy whatsoever, kind of anywhere in life at the time. And it was just a lot of stuff that I think stemmed from just like how I dealt with everything. Just with the way our career went up there. Like, WWE was my dream. And, you know, I always knew it wasn't going to be easy. I think I just took it to heart because I saw just a lot of really good people that I spend a lot of time with go through a lot of stuff. And so to me, it's really hard to sit there and complain when I can see a lot of other people who are very justified to complain as well, who aren't, or who are just able to do it in better ways, but still see it not working out. One of the best things I can ever actually remember from seeing somebody in a locker room do was before it was supposed to be Moxley and Corbin at a pay-per-view, and it was like the last TV before it, and something happened where their whole match got like cut, and they only had so much time to do something. I remember the writer coming in to Mox and telling him this, and Mox goes, "What the fuck?" You know, and he's like, he's about to say something like, "I can't believe," and then I see him like look around the locker room, and that was one of the locker rooms where it's jam-packed of a bunch of 205 guys that aren't doing anything at the time, a bunch of other guys who are all struggling, and he just goes, "Fuck it." Like, you know what I mean? So it's hard. Like, everybody there is fighting and just never stops. So yeah, that's, you know, it was like a hard thing to deal with.
And I think being, a fan of you, and especially your fans at NXT, because we could all see what you were capable of, I think a lot of us were kind of like, we were with you with the relief. It was like, here we go. We're now going to get to see something exciting, because you've got so many other promotions now where people can go and be themselves. You know, they're not expected to change. They kind of get given a canvas and say, go out there, you show us what you can do. And I think that's what we're all excited for you in the Ascension, because we're kind of like, we know what you can do. We're excited to see it now. Yeah,
me too. I know both me and, Con, we're just, what a tease. You know, we got 2 weeks out on the road, and just so happy with everything we did. Like, both of us felt so great. The people were so great. And then COVID hits and, stops the world. And it's just like, oh my God, like, there's been so much time, and we were just both so fired up to go and just get in the ring and get back out there, and things that we had lined up. And luckily, I believe one of the main things that we had that I'm super looking forward to, and I know Connor is too, I believe is still a go. So hopefully in the next month or two, once things, if they go back, which is hopefully what it's looking like, there'll be something to look for. I'll give you that.
And there is something, I mean, for those who didn't watch our podcast last week, there is kind of a little bit of an exclusive that we're allowed today, which my co-host, Just Dave, came up with, and he was really excited because he was like, oh, I've got this really good idea, a good name for the Ascensions. So I'll let you kind of tell the story, because I know he's mega pleased, and it's kind of a big thing.
Man, that's the best part of it. Like the minute he said that when we were talking, because like Ryan and I had talked about it for so long, like thinking up different things, and we're like, oh, nothing quite fits. Like the only thing we kind of liked at the time was just FKA. And then Just Dave happens to, you know, say it like, hey, I got a name for you guys. And I'm thinking, oh, this will be good. What's it going to be? You know, that's the asshole in me. And what do you say? The Awakening. And I felt like I saw it, like Ryan have it happen too. Like we were both like, oh, what? Oh, that actually sounds right. Like, what the fuck? How did neither of us actually think of that? So like it's funny because we played around with so many words. I don't think that one ever came up. So, you know, Just Dave woke us up, and I believe we're going to be called The Awakening from now on. So
that's incredible. And you know, that's genuinely a moment that he'll never forget, because he is a massive fan of you. And I mean, he's always the bigger wrestling fan than me. He's a lot more knowledgeable, and he loved you guys, especially in NXT. And I think for him now, for life, knowing that he's kind of given you guys a new name, I think that's going to be something that he's always going to love. And I can see him wearing every piece of merch that you release.
I think I told him, I was like, we're going to take the name, but I'm not going to give you a t-shirt. So, I usually am. But, you know, Ryan's the nicest guy in the world, so I'm sure he'll slide him one.
You know, that's the thing which, I mean, not surprised me, like, you know, to be an asshole. When I first spoke to Ryan and then you last week, I kind of didn't know how you would be. And you're both the nicest, kindest people I think I've ever spoke to in regards to the wrestlers. Because, I mean, you know, Ryan's got such a big heart. He will do anything for anyone. And then I spoke to you, and you were exactly the same. So you can kind of see why you two just hit it off, because you both have that kind of just wanting to help people and being genuine. If you respect you respect them back.
Yeah, well, definitely. Like I grew up Canadian. I got my parents to give credit for every good value that I have in me. I'd say being a wrestler has probably turned me into the asshole a lot of other people know me as. But, you know, I've got a good balance in between. And like Ryan, like we were always friends even before being in the Ascension. Like I used to sit and tell him, like, man, I'd love to be in that. It's like, I see you fitting. It's like, I just, you know, I don't know why it doesn't come together. But like we used to hang out and stuff like outside of, you know, FCW, and we've always been good friends. So like it didn't seem like an unnatural mix. Like, you know, we are brothers. Like we're still brothers now. We talk all the time. Like the only reason we hadn't seen each other, you know, for a while on your podcast is just because of, you know, quarantine.
Yeah.
So, you know, he's got a family and stuff like that. And like I've invited him over here and there, but you know, it was just such a tricky time. I know he wants to keep his family safe. So, you know, we'll get together again soon. Like we both said many times, like, let's just get back out there. Like, got to get back out there. So.
Well, I'm excited because I know what you guys can do. And I think, you know, normally I'd be pushing to try and find out what this thing is in the next kind of couple of months. But I know that you'll be back soon on the show, and it won't be long to find out.
Yeah, the only reason I don't want to say anything is just because, like, we haven't signed anything in ink to say, but, like, we don't need to, like, sign anything at this point to do what we're about to do. And it's going to be just as exciting as everything else. Like I said, it's what I've wanted to do for a long, long time, especially within tag team wrestling. Like there's, at this point in time, if it's the very first thing we do out of the gates here, it's the exact way I want to start. And I want to just keep going and going in that direction. So I know Ryan's feeling the exact same way about it. Like that's why we're both kind of going crazy here. We're like, oh, we're about to do something so cool. Come on, let us go.
Well, it won't be long. And I've got to say, thank you so much for coming on today. And it's been so interesting to find out how you actually got into wrestling and to hear the backstory, how you trained in the dungeon, like the most legendary place to train. And you've got such a story to tell that I've never heard before, and a lot of our listeners wouldn't have heard of. So to actually get the chance to speak to you for over an hour and just hear your career so far, it has been incredible. Thank you so much.
It was nice, yeah. I've never gotten to do it so much, so thanks for giving me the opportunity to. Appreciate it.